Hello, this is Archie Dunlop with Talking Astrology with Archie on Thursday, April the 27th, 2023. I do try to keep in touch with the news, but sometimes I'm a bit late. And I'm really late when it comes to Tucker Carlson. He lost his job some days ago, and I'm sure everyone's moved on to something else. Nonetheless, I do want to look at his horoscope today. And in looking at his horoscope, I want to ask two questions. Firstly, why is he so successful? And secondly, why did he lose his job when he lost his job? So what made April 2023 special for him? I'm not saying I've come up with any brilliant answers. Indeed, his chart doesn't make full sense to me. I don't think I would have guessed that he was a Taurean, but still, I will do my best. So, without any further ado, I will look at his chart. So, this is it. He was born on May the 16th, 1969, at 10:07 a.m. So, where is the Taurus in him? Okay, Taurus. I've looked at some YouTube videos with him, and maybe we can see a bit of Taurus there. His approach seems to be to focus on common sense, at least common sense how he sees it. You know, if you're someone watching Fox News, you know, you don't want things to be too complicated. Common sense, basic facts, basic reality. You know, it's a good way of countering woke arguments, which can be often complete nonsense. So he seems to take a line with his monologues of just, focusing on what his audience believes in, grounding his arguments in his audience and creating a foundation for it. And I suppose that is a Taurean thing. We notice actually he's got the sun and moon in Taurus. So he's very focused, and I suppose the moon and sun are in earth signs. So that's part of his approach. But he does have Mercury in Gemini, and clearly he's a brilliant communicator. Mercury is a planet of communication, and it's in its own sign in Gemini. It's also the dispositor of the chart. So let me explain what that means. So let's take a planet. Let's take Saturn. Saturn is in Taurus. So what rules the sign Taurus? Well, Venus rules the sign Taurus. Okay, let's find Venus. Venus is in Aries. What rules Aries? Venus is in Aries, so it's disposed of by Mars. Okay, Mars is in Sagittarius. What rules Sagittarius? Jupiter. And Jupiter is in Virgo. And what rules Virgo? Mercury. So Mercury disposes of all the planets in the chart. And I think that does give his Mercury a great strength. So he really can communicate. But there are some other more subtle things in this chart which are perhaps worthy of interest. This is the midheaven, the highest point in the chart. And he's got Venus on the midheaven. Okay, it's 6 degrees off, but it's close enough. And people with Venus on the midheaven are able to project charisma. They clearly have a great belief in themselves. But in a public sense, they are attractive people. So, I'm sure that Venus is really helping him out. But there is something else going on here. Here's the Uranus. Now, Uranus is at 0 degrees Libra. In other words, he's got Uranus on the Aries point. Now, a whole generation of people born in the late 60s will have Uranus close to the Aries point. But somehow Tucker Carlson has been able to make it his. He's been able to own that Uranus on Aries. And so if you've got Uranus on the Aries point, it means that you can be a disruptive influence. You're trying to overthrow the status quo. Remember, Uranus is in Libra. So people have a view of the world, people are comfortable with that view, and then along comes Tucker Carlson and he challenges it. I mean, for example, I think that Tucker Carlson is pretty much the only person in the mainstream media who has questioned in a major way whether it's really worth putting so many resources into supporting Ukraine. He's even questioned whether the Ukrainian government is as nice and virtuous and honest as the mainstream media likes to tell us. So yes, I think there is a certain sense in which that Uranus on the Aries point is a maverick. And a further point about the chart, and I suspect that this is perhaps part of the key to his success, is the fact that he has got Venus and Mars. So the Venus-Mars midpoint is around 15 Aquarius, and that means it is exactly semi-square the Aries point. Now, if you have Aries on Venus-Mars midpoint, then that means that you can project a charismatic and attractive image to the world at large. So if you're a television personality with Aries on the Venus-Mars midpoint, then yeah, that's great. I mean, you can really reach out to your audience, and your audience will find yourself and perhaps your arguments to be very attractive. So that I think is an important part about the chart. He is very earthy. He's not just got the Sun and Moon in Taurus. He's got Saturn in Taurus. He's got Jupiter. He's got Jupiter in Virgo. The Jupiter in Virgo can sometimes be a bit mean. Jupiter doesn't actually work very well in Virgo. It can get caught up in petty details. You know, Jupiter is supposed to be the planet of expansion, moving to new horizons. Yet in Virgo, it's just concerned about the details. Another thing is he doesn't have any water in his chart. I mean, he's got the North Node in Pisces, but that doesn't really count. Neptune in Scorpio, but he doesn't have any personal planets, any traditional planets in water signs. So that might make him a little insensitive at times. He may seem to be unaware of the currents going on around him. You know, it's just what he wants to say. He's, all this Taurus, he's got clear views. He wants people to know about it. Gemini can talk until the cows come home. But there is perhaps a certain lack of sensitivity. Now, as far as why did he lose his job when he lost his job? Well, earlier in the year, he had Jupiter on the midheaven. Jupiter on the midheaven is often quite unfortunate, surprisingly. It often means it's a time when you lose your job, when Jupiter crosses your midheaven. He didn't lose his job the moment Jupiter crossed to midheaven, but it seemed with Jupiter going through his 10th house, this was perhaps a time of career change for him. So that might have had some impact. Then there were his returns, and I think the returns were quite useful. So the solar return chart is a chart set up for one's birthday or close to one's birthday. So if we look at his solar return for 2022, nearly 10 months ago, but that solar return is going to last for 12 months. We can see the solar return, he has Pluto on the midheaven and he had Uranus on the ascendant. So Pluto on the midheaven indicates a career transformation, the end or the death of one job and perhaps the beginning of another. Also, he has Uranus on the ascendant. So Uranus kind of turns things upside down. So I think that the solar return chart perhaps gave a hint that all may not be well with his job in Fox News. Then we've got another chart that we can come up with, and this is the increment chart. This is when the sun was 90 degrees from his birthday. So he has a sun at 25:38 Taurus, and this is when the sun is at 25:38 Aquarius. In other words, 3 months before his birthday. And this chart is set for February the 14th, 2023. And we can see that he had sun rising, perhaps a new beginning, sun conjunct Saturn, a bit of something tough going on there, something about responsibility or whatever, and having to deal with new stuff. But perhaps more importantly, Moon is on the midheaven. So we had Pluto on the midheaven in his solar return, Moon on the midheaven in his increment set for February the 14th, 2023. Change and flux at work, and the Moon is making an opposition to Mars. So Moon on the midheaven, opposition Mars, is another good indication of losing a job, because Moon is aspecting Mars. Mars is a planet of aggression, anger, breaking up. So there's a signature there. Finally, there's his lunar return. So the lunar return is a chart you can set up every month. So every month the Moon hits the place it was when you were born. So if we look at his lunar return, this would be for 2 days before he was born. 2 days before his birthday. 2 days. Let's get that right. This was 2 days before he was sacked. Let's get that straight. He had a lunar return, and on that lunar return, he has Pluto rising. And so, remember, the solar return last year, he had Pluto on the midheaven, and then Pluto on the ascendant at the lunar return, and this was probably the final trigger before he lost his job. So those are some thoughts. I'm not saying anything dramatic there, because when you're looking at a chart like this, when you already know someone's being sacked, it's 20/20 hindsight. You're just perhaps getting desperate to fit something. But I think the returns, these charts do perhaps indicate that his job was in danger. Anyway, I've gone on enough about Tucker Carlson, so I will now look at the planets for today, Thursday. So here's Thursday. What have we got? We've got the Moon in Leo. The Moon actually doesn't work very well in Leo. The Moon is a sensitive sign, and Leo is just too hot for the Moon. So many of us may feel that, we want attention, but can we handle it? And we may feel that the world is ignoring us. We may feel that, the spotlight is just passing us by. And if we do get into the spotlight, we may not be comfortable with it, especially with the Moon making an opposition to Pluto. So today, there's going to be some emotional caution, I think. We're not going to be fully ourselves in most cases. And while all this is going on, the moon is starting to make a square to the sun in Taurus. So, the moon is wanting attention, but the sun in Taurus is about having to deal with material realities and that kind of thing. And yeah, it may be not something we're particularly comfortable with. And I should say that the moon is kind of halfway between Sun and Pluto. So the moon is on the Sun-Pluto midpoint. So it's going to all be too much. I should point out though that Uranus is on the Venus-Mars midpoint. That may represent some kind of excitement, particularly in terms of relationships. It's often said with Uranus on the Venus-Mars midpoint, it's about falling in love quickly and falling out of love just as quickly. So in terms of relationships, it could be about a passing obsession, or perhaps if someone shows an interest in you, a romantic interest or a physical interest in you, and this is the kind of attention you want, don't get too excited, because this attention may be very temporary. We may be dealing with someone, or you may be dealing with someone who could get bored of you very quickly. So don't be fooled by romantic advances, because they might not be serious. And on the subject of romance, well, not really on the subject of romance, but Aries is on the Venus-Hades midpoint. Aries on the Venus-Hades midpoint is not romantic at all, actually. Witte and his colleagues kind of associated it with prostitutes and pimps. So this might be a time when these kind of people crawl out of a woodwork. So I don't know, it all depends on your lifestyle. But if you're in that kind of lifestyle, be careful, because there's a lot of low life around. So that's all I've got to say for today about the stars, though I mustn't forget about the 12 signs of the zodiac. So Aries, 4 stars. Creativity shouldn't require an audience. Taurus, 3 stars. Some of your contacts are distracting you from your life goals. Gemini, 3 stars. Alternative routes should be avoided. Cancer, 2 stars. Not a day for spending money on cheap baubles. And still worse, to spend money on expensive baubles. Leo, 4 stars. Yes, you're in your element, but don't forget your career direction. Virgo, 2 stars. Leave the screaming and shouting to other, hotter heads. Libra, 2 stars. If you want balance, it is you that has to change, not the outside world. Scorpio, 4 stars. Career responsibilities loom large, and you have to decide how much advice you can tolerate. Sagittarius, 5 stars. Light is pouring through the opening door. Capricorn, 3 stars. In relationships, there's an uneasiness. It should pass. Maybe Capricorn is 2 stars, not 3 stars. Aquarius, 3 stars. Right now, you're a hard person to fathom. And finally, Pisces, 3 stars. Don't lift heavy weights, but you are an interesting proposition. So those are my 12 horoscopes. And finally, we have my I Ching reading. So the first I Ching I threw was number 29, which is the abyss. So we might find ourselves today in a dangerous situation. Now, let's not exaggerate. It's, I do I do an I Ching reading every day, so it's going to be a relatively dangerous situation, and we we have to be careful. And in this situation, when things are dangerous, not critically dangerous, I don't think, we have to keep it simple. We mustn't do things that are elaborate, because we need to be in control. So if we keep things simple, then we're likely to avoid the danger. And indeed, other people might actually start to regard us as being quite responsible, the kind of person that can be trusted in a crisis. And as a result of this, by the end of the day, we might find ourselves having a powerful influence on the people around us. So that's all I'm going to say for today, and I will talk to you tomorrow.